Dr. Marcia Reynolds is considered an expert on the brain, helping people to understand why they do what they do so they can make better choices and handle difficult situations. She speaks at conferences, coaches executives around the world, and has taught classes in leadership skills, emotional intelligence, and advanced coaching in 35 countries. She is the author of Outsmart Your Brain, Wonder Woman, a book written to help smart, strong women find contentment and direction, and her latest book on turning negative conversations into positive experiences called The Discomfort Zone. Her words have appeared in major publications, including Fortune Magazine, Psychology Today, and the New York Times, and she has appeared on ABC World News. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you, Gail. Glad to be here.
Well, Marcia is an exceptional person. I know her personally, and what she has accomplished and the people that she has trained and taught is just amazing. And so I need to ask you, because this I really don't know, what got you interested in studying the brain?
Well, Gail, I've been working with people for decades, but it was about 20 years I was into uh, developing training programs in leadership and communications. And it was always a frustration that people would enjoy the training, but then they leave and go do nothing different. And I've been studying behavioral change also for years. And then I read about emotional intelligence. And all of a sudden, it just like it was a spark that went off in my brain. And I said, oh, that's right. There's this thing called emotions we're not dealing with, which led me to really understanding how does the brain work, what really gets us to change and to overcome our fears, and so I was just so curious and fascinated by the brain and the impact of emotions. So that's how I got into it. Just really wanting to make a difference with people and being frustrated until I found a deeper understanding.
Well, you talk about this understanding, but other than the power of positive thinking,
Mhm.
how does emotional energy impact success?
Well, what people don't realize a lot of times that it's not just the thinking, but it's the emotion. If it's just the thought, if you don't fully believe in it and have that sense of, oh, I feel good about this or I really want this, then just the thought isn't important enough. That in fact, there's a lot of research done that the energy that we create and we put out, both for our own achievement, but also how we connect with others, is much more emotionally based than thought based. That when you think a thought, that there really isn't that much measurable energy, but when you feel, I really want this, I'm passionate about it, or I want to calm down, you have to feel calm, you have to feel passion to make the difference. You can't just think.
So, do you believe that most people are pretending?
I don't think they're pretending in the sense is that they just don't realize. So for years, that there were so many things that said change your thoughts, you change your behavior, and people would try to do that, and then nothing would happen. So, like for example, let's say you're driving your car. And you're very frustrated because the traffic is bad and people are cutting you off. So you can be mad, you can be impatient, and then you tell yourself, oh, be patient. Well, that doesn't last very long. But
That's true.
if you then, maybe put on some music or focus on your surroundings or something you're grateful for, and maybe you have a picture of your family nearby, when you start to shift to the emotions of calm, gratitude, uh, being out in a nice environment, then all of a sudden you just are patient. So it's the being patient, not just the thinking patient. So I think when people start to realize that it's a much deeper sense than just the thought, that they'll understand how they can do it for themselves.
Well, now we've all heard about difficult people. And
Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
In fact, I used to teach a course how to deal with difficult people, and I would
Mhm.
often laugh because many of the people were their own worst enemies. But
Right.
what do you do to prepare for a difficult conversation?
Yeah. Well, there's three things in particular that I often teach people when they have a conversation coming up that they may be afraid of, and they want to avoid it, or maybe they're just really angry and frustrated with the person. So the first thing you have to remember that if you go into a conversation and you want someone to change, that it can't just be that you want them to change because you want them to change, because they'll just think, well, that's what you want, but you're not interested in me, and that's going to, shut down the conversation right away. So the first step is to look at what would be useful for the person if they were to change their behavior. So if it were a leader in an organization, is what I teach a lot, to try to identify what would be useful for the person. Do they want to be a leader? Do they want better relationship with their peers? What goal do they have that you can help them achieve by helping them to change? But even when we're looking at our friends and our family, again, what is it that's important to them that the change can help them with? So you want to first go into the conversation with an intention to help the person achieve something they want, not just what you want. The second thing is to check your emotions. Can you shift out of being frustrated and angry into being patient, calm, maybe courageous, and caring about the person you're with. I always say that they need to feel that you're curious and interested in them, which is feelings, not just thoughts, or it's going to shut them down. So you have the intention. What's the intention of the conversation? The emotion. And then you go in with respect and regard. Can you believe in the person that if they understand why this is important for them, that they are capable of changing? If you don't believe that the person is capable of changing, so again, going in and asking for a change is not going to work. And they're going to know, well, this person doesn't believe in me anyway, or they don't respect me, so that's going to shut them down. So you want to hold high regard. And sometimes we have to see potential in people even when they don't see it in themselves, that we believe they can achieve this even when they're not sure. And that's one of the greatest things you can take into these conversations.
So what if they don't really want to change though? I mean, you're doing all of this great, dialogue with them and you're working with them. We want to work towards their end goal, not necessarily our end goal, but they just don't want to change.
Well, that's a good thing to ask before you even go into a conversation. Is this person willing to even try? So I always say there's three things that people need for change. It's willingness, desire, and courage. And desire is the goal, but you got to start with willingness. If they're not even willing to have this conversation with you or to try, then you're going to have to do something else. So it's either, if you're a leader, you may have to go to consequences, um, or if it's a friend or family member, you have to really think through, if the person doesn't change, what will happen. And that will be the thing that you can share. And I would say, I always ask people right off the bat, are you willing to have this conversation with me? Are you interested in improving our relationship, or having other people respect you more? Are you interested in that? And would you be willing to talk to me about that?
And if they say no,
Well, then you have to accept that they're not. And then what are you
I
going to
always think
do?
if somebody says to you no to something like that, you just kind of hang there with your mouth dropping to your feet,
Yeah.
thinking,
Well, yeah,
"Oh,
that's an interesting thing. And I do then acknowledge, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you're not willing to do anything toward improving this relationship, or, getting things better for yourself. Is that what you're saying to me? And let them say, because oftentimes they'll say, well, not really, that they were just being resistant. But, again, if they say, no, I'm really not interested, then, you have to accept that you don't have any power in this situation. And what are you going to do next?
yeah, that is the question. What are you going to do next?"
Exactly.
So, um, you talk a lot about accessing the power of your entire nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
not just the brain, to make good decisions and hold more meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
That was like really interesting research that I kind of ran into um, when researching The Discomfort Zone, my last book, where there's things that they're studying now, and that when you look at the nervous system, the brain is only a piece of that. That there's this thing called the vagus nerve that connects three major organs together that are working in sync all the time. And those organs are your heart and your gut, as well as your brain. And too many times we spend our entire life just listening to our chatty brain and believe that that's the best guidance, when actually your heart and your gut are trying to give you messages all the time, but they have to send it to the brain for translation. So the thing is, can you take a breath, calm down, and be quiet and try to listen to what is your heart telling you at this moment? And really listen for that smaller voice. And then to ask the question, what's my gut telling me? So if you have a big decision to make in life, your brain's going to want you to sit down and look at the pros and the cons and what's possible that I might lose if I do this, but what might I gain? And so you try to make a logical decision. And it's good to do that. And so you write all those things down and then you put them aside. But then if you get quiet and you open your heart by thinking of people and things in your life that you're grateful for, that make you happy, and you can feel that opening in your heart. And then you ask your heart, what should I do? And then write it down. See what your heart tells you. And then you set that aside, and then you get real quiet again. And then you kind of can visualize, going, moving your awareness into your gut, like right below your navel is your center of your body. And this is your courage center. This is how we move forward in life. We move from our center. And if you can put your awareness there and you think about, times in your life when you were courageous and you spoke up or you said something in spite of your fear, you feel an energy from the center of your body. When you feel that energy, then ask your gut, what should I do? And then write it down. And then you have information from all three centers in your nervous system. So this isn't just woo-woo. This is real, that, they're now really documenting that how many neurons, 100 million neurons you have in your gut. And you don't need that to digest your food. And all the processing that's going on in your heart as well. So if you stop and you collect the wisdom from your other centers, and you can then compare, and it's going to tell you things. And it's the same thing when you are then in conversation with people. You can get stuck in your head, but if you quiet your head and just listen to them through your heart, what might you hear differently? And the same thing if you open your gut, with your courage, and you listen from your courage center, what might you hear? And this isn't necessarily easy, but I teach coaches coaching skills all over the world, and we work at this and practice this, and it's amazing the questions that the coaches come up with and what they hear when they open their entire nervous system instead of just depending on their head. So it's really good. And so, but I always say, start with your own decisions, and ask your heart and ask your gut and see what happens, see what you hear. And practice there.
Well, it's interesting all the things that you've been saying, because I have to say that for the majority of my life, I
Mm-hmm.
have really gone on gut and heart.
Yeah.
And then I have to say, but I haven't gone through all those writing it down and going back
Mm-hmm.
and visiting it. I just feel it and I
Mm-hmm.
do it. And then I go to some of these giant corporations that I've worked with in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
they're very analytical. There's not so
Yes.
much there about gut and about love. It's very
Uh-huh.
analytical. And I think, well, look how successful they are.
Uh-huh.
Look at the fact that they're doing so much. And maybe I'm going about it the wrong way. But I
Uh-huh.
still, to this day, even though my mind does use logic now much more than it ever did.